So today we're joined by Kristy Drutman, the creator of Brown Girl Green, a platform that's breaking barriers in environmentalism by connecting climate action with social justice. Kristy, how are you?
I'm doing great. I had a crazy start to 2025 with the LA wildfires. I'm currently out in Los Angeles. I didn't have to evacuate, but I evacuated because the air was just so horrible out here. And as someone who works on climate change and climate issues, it brought all of those issues really close to home, literally. So, I'm in a place right now where, kicking off the new year, thinking about my work as an environmental storyteller and educator online and figuring out ways that, I can turn that passion and turn it into further action.
And I was going to touch upon the wildfires. It's like the elephant in the room right now because I know you're in LA. Have you lived in LA for a while or did you just recently move to LA?
No, I'm recent. I mean, I grew up in Southern California as a kid, and then I moved away. I went to college in the Bay Area, then I lived on the East Coast, and then I just moved back to California to LA couple months ago, so like less than a year. So great, welcome.
Yeah, right. Welcome to LA.
Welcome.
Now, have you been able to see how these wildfires have intensified sort of over the years? Obviously, this was one of the worst that they've really ever had, but have you seen how they've intensified over the years? And does that connect to the bigger conversation about climate change at this point?
Yeah, so growing up, there was wildfires that happened all the time in California as a kid, and then in the Bay Area there was also extreme wildfires in the past couple of years as well. And so I'm no stranger to that, but I think that this was the worst. I think wildfire slash fire destruction. I think they said maybe in U.S. history. I could be wrong about that, but definitely in California's history. Um, and yeah, this is scary because even though the wildfires I grew up with, we kind of got used to it. There's definitely not wildfires happening in January
No
of
kidding.
all times. Like
Yeah.
this is not
And
the
did you
time
say,
of year.
and did you say that did you get personally affected or any of your friends or family got personally affected?
Yeah, I mean, my cousins had to evacuate their home. Luckily, didn't burn down, but like it did get impacted by it. I had friends of friends whose families lost their homes. Like I said, I was more personally impacted due to the air quality because just like breathing in the air, was toxic, and now there's still like a toxic ash advisory due to the high strong winds that could blow, the pollutants and the toxins in the air downstream from where the fires are at, which is where I live.
Of course.
And so, yeah, so I did evacuate for those reasons. And I think I just realized, like, this is going to be this way for a while until those fires are completely contained. That ultimately it's not going to be safe to breathe the air and fully drink the water for a while here.
And honestly, I could only resonate with you. I could resonate with you a bit because I'm on the East Coast of the United States. So I'm right near New York. I say Connecticut and no one ever knows what Connecticut is. So I always just say New York.
I get it. I lived in New Jersey. Same.
Okay, so you understand. You understand.
I get it.
I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, there were severe wildfires, I think near Canada.
Yep.
And for some reason, I mean, it must have been the wind. We actually caught a lot of the smoke and like the smog from those wildfires.
Mhm.
And like for 2 or 3 days, we had actually really, really poor air quality. And it's like everybody was like trying to stay inside, and even going outside, you couldn't be out for a long period of time. It affected sensitive groups. So I could only imagine. I remember actually trying to play sports outside, and after like 30 minutes, an hour, I was like, no, I'm gassed. I'm going back inside. So I could only imagine. I could really only imagine and like resonate a little bit to actually having those massive wildfires literally right directly where I'm from. So
Right.
is it, I mean, over the past couple of weeks, how have, I mean, it may be an odd question, but how have you been able to navigate that? Are people like just not going outside? Are you wearing masks? Like, how do you navigate? Like,
I mean, the air quality is a lot better now. I've been very cautious about wearing a mask. I don't go to the areas, where it's most impacted. Like a lot of parks and beaches are still shut down. So a lot of spots that like I really love, I can't currently access right now, which is a super big bummer. But I would say that overall, like at least like where I'm located, luckily, like, most people are kind of getting back into the swing of things. People are going back to school and to work. But yeah, for like the first couple of days, it was scary. Like the sky was like black.
Thought the
Couldn't go.
world was about to end. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And luckily, like, I grew up like an hour outside of LA, so I had a place that I could evacuate to. But a lot of people didn't have that position. They just had to stay inside, seal their windows, hope for the best. And, I'm actually going to be releasing some content soon. Because I interviewed, an air expert, and she was giving me all these tips on, needing to like recirculate the air in your home, because then people are sealing their windows, but then you're sealing your windows and then you're cooking on a gas stove and then you're breathing in all the
Yeah.
toxins from your gas stove. And it's like people don't even I don't even think about that. We're just screwed either way. It's like go outside, it's bad, go inside, it's bad. So, you can do what you can. At the end of the day, all you can do is preventative things like getting air purifiers, taking care of yourself, making sure that you're checking in on your loved ones. And ultimately for me, like, I want to host some community events, to do some fundraisers, support people that were impacted by the fires, supporting reforestation efforts, and local, ecological conservation groups, that are trying to, think about, sure, if a lot of things are burnt down, what goes in its place? How are we going to rebuild LA stronger and better than ever, right? Because I think that's been the most beautiful thing about it here is like, despite so much tragedy, I've seen so much community, so much love, so much care. And I think that's actually making me happy that I moved here, even though it's been a mixed bag,
Of course.
controversially with all of it.
You
Like,
get
I'm
the
like,
good with the bad. So
you get the good, the bad, the yin and the yang of life, right? And so I think for me, it's like it's actually inspiring me now to think about like how can I elevate, do more, be a bigger contributor to my community as well.
gotcha. That's beautiful. So I know you mentioned reforestation, like trying to reforest some type of populations. Now, I saw in your content that you recently just went to Mexico and did
Yeah,
a tree planting trip there, correct?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I did a tree planting trip in the Yucatan Peninsula where I went and yeah, basically just joined an organization called Plant for the Planet. They're an international organization, and their whole thing is about helping local communities use forestation or reforestation as like a means to build more local economic security and opportunity and food security for their area. And so a lot of these people in the Yucatan Peninsula, they were previously employed by the lumber industry, committing illegal mining and like illegal timber mining as well. And it was great because then this organization came in and then employed these people to move away from doing that illegal deforestation towards actually being employed to plant the trees. um, yeah, because I think sometimes people like have this misconception that like, oh, like people in these like poor, less developed countries, like, oh, they're just destroying the environment because they have to for survival. And it's like, yeah, that's a part of it. Like you have to create new systems like that are going to create like a circular model that like not only is protecting the environment but actually providing opportunities for communities. Because that's the only way they're going to have incentives to want to continue protecting that place because they didn't get paid for it, right? If
Correct.
you're getting paid to do, maybe destroy a place versus protecting it, if the destroying pays more, even if maybe that goes against your values, if that's what's going to feed your family at the end of the day, that's what you're going to do.
Of
So it's
course.
like, and I think that's the thing I'm really passionate about, and that's kind of why I started my company, Green Jobs Board, which is my company that's focused on getting people green careers and working in the space, is really thinking about like how are we constantly making it known to people that there is economic opportunities, job opportunities, climate solutions that exist that could actually benefit their lives, and isn't creating like extra inconveniences or making people's lives worse, right? And so I felt like the tree planting trip showed me like that's possible as like a case study. And now it's made me think like, what else could exist out there? What are other programs that are scalable like that are meeting the needs of people and the environment on different fronts?
I love that. And I want to double click into that really quickly because obviously, like you mentioned, the communities that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, it's very difficult to make environmentalism relatable, right? How difficult, or how are you able to balance advocating for these big climate solutions, these big projects, being more green and being more eco-friendly, while also still being able to address the community's needs of trying to put food on their table, trying to be able to provide, which, by the way, might be counteractive towards being green for the community. So with
Yeah.
whether it may be
Right.
your project, I know it's a very difficult question and it's not a quick one, it's not a quick answer, but are there things that come to the top of your head where you're able to balance having these big projects while also being able to cater to these populations and these community needs to be able to provide for their family or put food on their table?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like I said, like I think this program that I did in Mexico was a good example. I would say there's other programs where there was a really big push in Washington D.C. a couple of years ago, and that was like pushing to give benefits around energy efficiency, especially to low income communities. And there's a lot of people that are trying to come up with like programs like that, where it's like, oh, we could do things like weatherization or making your home energy efficient and giving people in these communities like incentives to do that, which not only has climate benefits but makes their homes more resilient, helps them save money on their energy bill. Like those are examples of like, maybe smaller scale but yet huge wins. Because energy efficiency, like the lack of energy efficiency that we have in this country today, again, I don't know how to pull the stat out, so you may have to look this up later. But yeah, a lot of energy is lost just because the ways homes these days are designed, it's leaking energy. Like we're losing power, and that means people are losing money on what they're paying for these energy bills just to heat their homes, cook their food, take a shower, all these things, right? And that's an issue, right? That's an environmental issue, but it's even more like you're wasting money. And so it's like we need solutions like that where it's like, oh, let's create these fixes and these incentives that make it cheaper for people to make these kind of fixes that long term, sure, is better for the climate because you're reducing emissions, but also like isn't costing people more money. There isn't like an abundance of those kind of solutions, if I'm being fully honest with you. A lot of these things do cost more money because the way our world is designed is through subsidies. And right now, the energy sources that are subsidized is the fossil fuel industry, is oil and gas. It's food that's not necessarily the best for us. It's you know, chemical additives that gets added to preserve food. Like it's a lot of these things that aren't necessarily good for us, but because they're so widely consumed, it's almost like viewed as like that's the only way the world works, right? But we have to remember and be critical that the way the world works is because it's designed through our economic systems that create incentives or disincentives for that to happen, right? Regulations that decide what goes through and what doesn't. And so I think those of us, for people listening, it's like if we want to create solutions, if we want to create solutions that create those multiple benefits, then then you have to work with a lot of different actors, government, private sector, nonprofit. It's going to be a lot of like cross sector collaboration to create solutions that like put communities first. Because ultimately the community itself is the biggest expert on like what those needs are. And I don't think the way that solutions today are being designed are necessarily always putting communities first. And that's a big part of the problem.
I was just about to ask something around that because I wanted to almost take a step back quick, and I almost wanted you to share not only a little bit more about yourself, but what sparked this journey, right? Um, Brown Girl Green, it started, I believe in your content, I looked that it started from a powerful moment at a conference, correct? At an environmental conference. Could you share a little bit more about that experience? What inspired you to create the platform? And is it because there's a lack of environmental movement nowadays within our government and the policies that we are sort of living by? Do you feel as if there's just we are not living to a certain standard, or things are not being pushed, or maybe things are being pushed that are going against helping climate change and helping our planet?
Yeah. So you just want to know like
How did
how it
this all
started?
come about? How did you start this movement? Was it more, obviously there's passion here, but was it more of like going against the grain of what everyone else is telling you? Is
Oh
it
yeah.
more of like
Oh,
this is what you should?
definitely.
What sort of is making you do this? Where's the passion coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm a Filipino American, climate advocate, and I really want to do things to help people. And the Philippines is one of the top countries that is vulnerable to the climate crisis. And so I was like, yeah, and I was seeing communities struggling around these issues. And yet I didn't see anyone who looked like me, other Filipinos or Asian Americans who are being given a platform to talk about how these issues were actually impacting our communities. And I saw such a disconnect in how, honestly, I thought environmentalism was being talked about on a bigger mainstream platform. It felt very elitist. It felt very like, okay, it's great. Like, we can clean up our parks, we can clean up our oceans. And yeah, that's all super important. But what about talking about like what we're talking about, like making these solutions more accessible, making sure it's not going to cost people an arm and a leg, making sure the way we're communicating this is culturally relevant, tying in where people come from, and not just this kind of like sterilized version that I was seeing around sustainability that was just focused on the science. I was
Correct.
like, science isn't going to move people. What moves people is culture. What moves people is art, storytelling, creativity.
Yep.
So in my head, I'm like, I just don't think this is being done well.
That's nice though. And your background, your own experiences were able to it
Exactly.
kind of shaped the way that you approach this, no?
Exactly. Because for me, I grew up in a digital age. I'm not exactly full on Gen Z, but like I'm right on that borderline of like being a millennial. And for me, like I grew up majority in the digital age though, like I did. And so for me, like that's where I get my information. That's where I was sharing things. That's where I was kind of sharing like what I was doing in college around like youth activism. So I was doing that even before even having a platform. And I realized these tools are really powerful. I was seeing that like influencers, like people, that like had big followings were selling things like skincare and yoga pants. And I was like, okay, that's that's interesting to me that's like what gets people. And I was like, what if I just did that, but like a climate version of that?
Right.
And so that's how it started. I was like, yeah, like I was like, I have a good personality. I look good on camera and I'm smart and I know this stuff. I know the science, I know the policy. Let's just turn it into a little package and put it out in the world. And that's basically what happened. Like I just kind of threw it out there, saw what was going to happen. So for the first like year and a half, I was like working a 9 to 5, and then 5 to 9 was like building out this platform and like just grinding on it. Again, had no real following at the time, but I was just like, someone may listen, and eventually people were starting to listen. People were starting to like check it out, and it started off, as a podcast, and turned to blogs, and then videos, and then yeah, like basically from there, like it just started to like really pick up momentum where I was starting to get invited to like do certain events and like get involved with like um different projects. And then yeah, and then in 2020 during the pandemic, my platform just kind of blew up. And then because I built this whole, portfolio of work over time of like, interviews and blog content information, people could see that body of work. And then all of a sudden it was like all these organizations were like, yeah, like we need to work on telling stories better. And then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, people are starting to wake up and realize we need to tell better stories, more stories that focus on intersectionality, that's putting people of color at the forefront of these conversations. And yeah, from there, like the rest is kind of history for now, where like then it became like a full on platform and then my full time job. And yeah, and
If you don't
that's,
mind me asking, what was your full time job at the time?
oh, I was working at a climate nonprofit.
Okay, so it had to do because a lot of people are like, oh, I worked at a completely different industry, and then the 5 to 9 was something that I was passionate about. But you actually had the luxury of
Oh
being able
no,
to work in
I've
both.
been about this. I've been about this for a.
Okay, yeah, okay. So you really do what you say. I like that.
Oh no, that's been my thing. So yeah, so I was like working at this organization, and then also during that time, like, and then I got laid off from that organization along with a lot of other people, um, and then it kind of forced me into like being like, okay, I need to like embrace this entrepreneur game. And during that time, I got invited to be an assistant lecturer at UC Berkeley. So I actually went back to my alumni, I'm alumni of UC Berkeley. I went back to my alma mater and taught a course on social media and social change. Then I consulted for some companies. And then I built out this platform full time.
Did you catch a lot of resistance when you first built out the platform?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
In what ways?
People are just like, oh, that's a cute little hobby. There's still sometimes where people think it's a hobby where I'm like, that's funny because
Yeah.
it's a full scale business. But
Yeah.
okay, I'll call it whatever you want me to call it. That's fine.
Have
But
you
yeah,
gotten resistance in the literature though? Like as far as like people backlashing the things that you're like, because of course there's always going to be haters and people saying, "Oh, you're on social media," or they're always going to have their opinions, which is just a reflection of their own insecurities. But is there more, honestly? But is there more in a deeper meaning of like the knowledge that people are saying, "Oh, like the things you're talking about is not accurate," or thing? Because I'm sure it sounds just off the base of it, you're very factual, and it sounds like the things you talk about are research and scientific. Is there ever like people that just come crazy at you for like the academia or
oh,
the
100%
yeah,
all
right?
the time. Oh no, I got plenty of climate deniers in my comments. I have plenty of people who disagree with me about some things that I share. And like, honestly, I believe in free speech, but I think there's people that are, I also know that there's ignorant speech and people that just don't know the facts. So
Especially
I think,
nowadays, yes.
especially nowadays in the
Yeah.
age of misinformation, I think that's viewed as like one of the top global safety risks right now is like misinformation, disinformation in the world. And it's true. It's like, in a world where facts don't even have a currency, what do you do?
Right. Yeah, it's
It's a
very
good
true.
question. It's a scary question.
Very.
I don't know how to answer that question,
Yeah.
but I can say that like all I can do is try to show people the research, the information. I try my best to make sure I cite my sources. Even linking articles, even if I do a green screen video, I always have like the article in the background so people can fact check me. Like I'm very about transparency where I can be.
You
It's
come
never
correct. You come correct.
I come correct. It can never be perfect, but we try our best. What can you do?
Of course. So I imagine you are on you're on TikTok as well. You're
Yes.
Instagram, YouTube, all those different platforms,
Yeah.
correct?
Every platform. Yeah.
Perfect. So obviously you've mentioned before, and if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I am 29. I just turned 29.
Okay, awesome. So obviously you have an impact on younger generations. So, and the concept of like climate anxiety is actually very real for a lot of younger generations. So, is there like a practical or hopeful action that you think anyone could literally take to feel like they're empowered to face these types of climate crises that we're going through, whether it be climate change, um, I don't know, literally anything, as far as the problems that we're facing today?
Like, what is my piece of advice?
Piece of advice, what the feel good moment that somebody could take from this and say, you know what, I'm going to start,
Yeah.
planting this in front of in my garden today, or I'm going to start using this instead of this, something like that, something that makes them feel like they're
Yeah.
actually empowered to feel like they're making a difference.
Yeah, I think a big thing that people can do is definitely like getting involved with like their local environmental justice organization, whether that's like hosting a beach cleanup or a park cleanup, like beautifying a space that you're in, to then like, actually thinking about like how could you start things like a community garden, or supporting or like organizations that are run by people of color in your area that are focused probably on a lot of intersectional issues from like having access to good housing, access to clean water, clean air. There's a lot of organizations and cities and communities all over the country now. So I would say do a little bit of your research on like what are some local sustainability organizations in your area and volunteer some of your time to support them because a lot of them are cash strapped, capacity strapped. They're usually always happy to get support from people. So I would say like you don't need to like start your own thing. I would say support what already exists and try to like support what's going on in your area. I'd say another thing that people could do definitely just like um, eliminate any products that have PFAs. PFAS are, and you can look it up, PFA. They're these like forever chemicals that are found in products typically plastic products or Teflon. And a lot of these chemicals are really, really damaging to the environment.
Do you know what
And
they're mostly in? Are they mostly in like
they're mostly in
toiletries?
cookware. They're in cookware. They're in Tupperware. They're in even like children's toys.
Really?
They're in a lot. It's in like
And
everything.
will
But
it say, how do people know if they're in them?
you could probably research the products, the company. The only way you would know it didn't is if it said it was free of it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
That's startling because I can't even remember. I mean, mind you, maybe I'm not looking for it, but I
Like
can't
if you
remember.
have do you have a non-stick pan? Like do you have
I
non-stick pan?
do. I have multiple nonstick pans.
Yeah, so they probably have that. Like
Really?
most likely. So you probably want to
Thank
get
you
rid
for
of
that.
those.
For
Anyway,
thank you for making me going to the store right now and getting something.
I've just been on a rampage to educate people about this topic specifically because I'm like, that is something you could do today that actually like impacts you. Like it's impacting your health every day if you're cooking with a nonstick pan that is full of PFAS.
Yeah.
Like switch
So
out your
not
pan.
only does it affect you, but it also affects the environment as well.
It does because like also like yeah, like imagine you cook something, you throw it away, it's
Hmm.
contaminated with that stuff that goes in the water stream or the landfills. Like it's all connected. So I'd say that in your household, if people want something like that, it's great. I'd say also try to switch things from plastic to more reusable things like copper, aluminum, things like that. Again, it's not just about it being good for the environment, it's better for your health because majority of us have microplastics in our bloodstream, and that can create what's called bioaccumulation. And bioaccumulation basically means that throughout a lifespan, if you have more of these microplastics build up, it can create, some of this disruption in your health and well-being. So I'd look so the more you can eliminate putting your food in plastic, putting your skincare and the things you're putting on in plastic, all of that's really important. That's another thing I would tell people as like a first step.
I like that. It just stinks because the plastic things are so much cheaper, which honestly is the
Well,
issue I feel like around.
this is
There's
the
a
whole
reason, there's a price for everything. You pay for
at the
everything.
end of the day, you make your
You do
choices.
whatever you want to do, of course. I
No,
agree with you. I would much rather
honestly,
pay the extra money to be able to make
right.
sure that my health and well-being's first, but I understand where people are financial.
Yeah, not
Yeah, they're in
yeah.
financial disparity and they're thinking to themselves, okay, am I going to pay $10, $15 extra for this, or am I just going to get
No, you're
the,
right.
yeah.
And last thing for things that people could like save money on to think about is like there are things called like CSAs, which is like community supported agriculture. I I even need to do this myself. You can order. Usually, I did it when I live in the Bay Area, but I want to see in LA like some CSAs. But basically, they're kind of like these like farm boxes that like a community group or organization can put together, and they're usually in like a lot of areas. And they usually have like produce at a more discounted rate than a grocery store,
Oh,
and
no
it's grown
kidding.
and it's grown locally. Um, and yeah, that can be like a really good thing because sometimes they even do like what we call like imperfect produce, where like the vegetables or the fruits, if they're not perfect, they would normally get thrown out. You can also buy those at like a super discount. So I would look into programs like that. Like if you're someone who wants to eat healthy, eat organic, but can't fully afford that, there are programs that exist that are subsidized. And then even if you do have food stamps or EBT or whatever, there's also like incentives now that can give you more discounts on getting more organic food also. So I would
That's
look.
really nice. That's really nice. And there's some, I believe there's apps as well. I
I
can't
think there's
remember off the top of my head. There was one that I was using. Again, it gives you a good idea of how long I was using it for. But there's apps. I know that at least in the Northeast, like any like bakeries or any restaurants that are willing to throw out, and it would even be healthier type places that are willing to like, or we're going to throw out the waste
oh
product.
yeah, too good to go. Too
That's
good to
it. That's it right there. That's it. You got it. Okay, so it's all over. So that's I think that's a good alternative as well because it's not just
go.
all fast. It's not all junk food. You could find some hidden gems in there. and
Right.
it'll be a fraction of the
Yeah.
cost. A lot of it's like 50% off, 60% off, and they'll give you a bag of goods, like a bunch of different things that they'll be able to you could pick up, which I think is amazing. So yeah, so I guess those are very good alternatives. Now, something I wanted to dig into really quickly, because I think honestly you're an amazing storyteller. Like, I've watched a lot of your content. I really do love the way that you tell stories. I love the way that you conduct your content, even just your podcast. It's amazing. It's a very big part of your platform. So this is gonna, I could give you a second to think about it, but this is just more of like a selfish moment where I just want to get a better idea and pick your brain. Like, what's one story or moment, whether it be your recent trip to Mexico or just something completely left field, that stuck with you and kind of deepened like your commitment and passion to the work that you do and the content that you put out? Like, what's something that's actually like really brought a deeper appreciation to the work that you do, and you're like, yeah, this is why I do this? I would imagine it would be so like because with the Mexico thing, not only are you affecting the environment, but you're also affecting the local communities, right? So I'm sure that's very self-fulfilling as well. But it may be something there. It could be something that, again, that you haven't put out in your content that maybe you'll just give me a sneak peek into. I would just love to be able to get a good idea of that.
No, yeah, no, thank you. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me has been over the years having people tell me, due to following you on your platform, like I changed my whole career trajectory, or I joined this organization, or I met someone by being a part of your community. And people who have attended my events, I've hosted a lot of events over the years, which has been amazing, of like actual in-person meetups with my like online community. I now have like a dating show, which I really
Really?
on this. I
You're a
know.
matchmaker.
I am. I have a dating show. It's called Love and Climate. I
Okay.
actually have people go on first dates to talk about climate change, but also friends. And people have actually made friendships. I don't know, no successful relationships yet, but
But
that's a
it just
different.
started, right?
But it just started like last year. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so give it some
Um,
time.
yeah, we're growing, but yeah, but through all of those little experiments and things I've done, like it's created new spaces for people who are passionate about this work to not feel alone, to feel empowered, to feel like they can keep going too. And honestly, knowing that like I have the knowledge and the skill set, and I sometimes just feel like I know too much. I know too much to not do something. I think it's like it's really my driving force, if I'm being honest about it. It's like, if you know this much and you have the privilege to do something about it, do something about it. That's how I feel about it. And then when I see people actually having a positive impact from the work I do, and share that with me and tell me that, and I can see it, yeah, it makes it all worth it, because it's like, well, I did impact someone's life.
It's fulfilling. It's super
Yeah,
fulfilling.
exactly.
It's
It's
bigger than
fulfilling.
you. So I know you just mentioned briefly, like you have a lot of other projects that you're working on as well. Whether like, I mean, what's the future of Brown Girl Green? I mean, are you looking to expand like
Yeah.
sideways or deep? Like, are you looking to go more deep into? Of course, you could. I guess you could do. It's more of an and not or, but like, are you looking to tackle more like climate crises and more planet things? Or are you looking to do more like not outlandish, but things that maybe don't directly correlate to economic or environmental things, like a dating show, or like something that's just super cool just because you want to try it out?
You know, I really like this question, because I'm really in a place of figuring that out right now, to be honest with you, because I have a lot of like pans on the fire, as they say. I don't
That's
even know if
cool though. That's
that's.
nice.
So I'm kind of just like seeing what really like blossoms, and not forcing anything. I'm kind of just like seeing what works best. Right now, my top priority is my other company, Green Jobs Board, which came out of Brown Girl Green, which is my platform and company focused on getting people jobs in this space. I think that's where my head is completely heading towards for majority of my time. So I think I'll still be doing interviews and content on Brown Girl Green. That's fun. It's lifestyle. It's educating people. But ultimately, my main priority is building my climate tech company, which is to get people into this industry. Because, like, as much as I want to talk about climate solutions all day and night, I care about like building the thing that's going to actually fix the problem, which I believe is empowering the next generation of the workforce to work on this issue. And how do we get them there? They need the education, they need the resources, they need the training, and they need the connections. And I'm like, again, I know too much to see the gaps in this space. I'm like, why don't I build a platform that actually can give that to people? And that's what Green Jobs Board is about. So I'm like, it feels like the natural, again, I didn't force anything. This is naturally progressed into being like, wow, this is what I need to do. I need to help people get placed in these jobs, get them to grow this infrastructure as fast as we can so we can actually like build a clean energy transition. We can actually support organizations that are advocating for laws and policies that protect, our environment. And the only way we can do that is by bringing the right people into those positions. And so that's where my head's at, is really giving probably majority of my attention to that, and then another percentage to like interviews, fun dating
That's
content,
cool. That's cool.
and then some for myself. I just moved to LA. Like, I want to do some content around like, making my place cute, talking about like the food I'm eating, the people I'm meeting, like, that'll be like another
Little
percentage.
vlogging stuff. That's cool.
The vlogging stuff, like people want to know about my life for
Yeah,
whatever reason.
of
So,
course.
yeah, exactly.
So going into the it's Green Jobs Board, how do you are you partnered with organizations that you kind of like vet people and you sort of bring them into any openings or stuff like that?
Exactly. So
And
right
how do
now,
you vet these organizations?
yeah. I mean, right now it's been mostly like, organizations post with us. If we get feedback from people that apply and they give us some feedback, like, hey, that organization's actually not great or something like that, like we do contact those organizations, we have conversations, and then
Has that happened?
yeah, I mean, we
I
do
mean,
have
I'm
a
sure you have so many I'm sure the rate is very, very
majority.
low.
Majority is great. There
Yeah,
have been a few bad eggs,
of
if I'm
course.
being honest with you, but that's fine. But I would say, like, yeah, like I think for the most part it's been really like we require all companies and organizations to put salary transparency. We don't allow unpaid stuff on the direct platform. We have put stuff in newsletters, but like we don't allow anyone to post like unpaid stuff on our platform, just to set again a standard of some sort. And our biggest thing is like, like I said, Brown Girl Green started out as like helping minorities, helping people of color who, were not included in this conversation, find a space. And then that community moved over to Green Jobs Board, and it was like, oh, now we're looking for jobs. And so then these organizations are like, yeah, it's really hard for us to find diverse talent. We don't know where to find them. And I was like, well, we built this because people wanted us to. So guess what? This is where they're at. And then all of a sudden people were finding that talent. And so I'm really passionate about that, especially for people who don't have a college degree. Like I said, people who are making these choices on like having to work for Amazon, be a delivery driver, or you could like work on, you know, a solar installation, or like work on a reforestation project. Like, I would like people to know that there's other options out there than what like they think is in the mainstream. And that's what, I'm building as a company, is not just like that space. Is like really to think about like what could the future economy look like, and that we could be a tool that everyone could use to learn like how do you get there.
That's nice. Now, was that your initial like plan, like to open something like that, to have a business like this, or was it like, you know what, at first I'm just going to preach what my passion is, and then I'll see where it leads, and it's led to this point? Or is this something like I've kind of had an idea that I've wanted to partner with organizations and bring
No,
people
no,
into?
no.
Because honestly, it sounds phenomenal. It sounds it's nice, it's
No,
fulfilling,
yeah,
and you're able to
no.
impact society and impact also things that are happening
Thank
in the
you.
world. So it's very fulfilling, and kudos to you to the impact that you've made. But like, has this been the plan since day one, or it's sort of twisted and turned into this?
No, I twisted and turned. Like, it started off honestly as an Instagram series that I made online, where I literally was like telling people like, hey, like like I was telling people online like, hey, like these are resources, fellowships, jobs that are out there, because I was like, why is this so hard for me? Why was this so hard for me when I got out of school? So I just started making it. No one had content like this. No one. So I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. And so I started posting about it, and people were raving about it. Like, it went viral, like
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people saving and sharing it. And they're like, can you turn this into something? And I was like, what do you mean? And then they're like, we want more. And I was like, oh,
I got
okay.
just the thing.
So then basically, yeah, it started off as Instagram posts, and we decided to launch it as an Instagram page. And then in the first week, we had like 3,000 followers. And then
Whoa.
organizations were like, can we start using you as our recruiting tool? And I was like, sure, I guess. And then people were starting to pay me.
Wow,
And
that's
then I was
huge.
like, and then we had thousands of people following us and then hundreds of organizations. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then me and my co-founder, who's my childhood best friend, we're like, yeah, like maybe we should just make a company, question mark, because the demand is so high. And then we decided to become a company. And now we reach over 150,000 people online, and we have hundreds of companies that use us. And we've now hosted like 3 pretty big summits, all bringing people actually in person now to connect, meet recruiters, and to get into jobs. And we've all done
Wow.
that from a social media post. So
That's
yeah,
it. I mean, that's the world we live in nowadays, right?
exactly.
That's kind of the impact that we're able to have, which again, kudos to you. You're just making an incredible movement. So before, because I don't want to take too much of your time, before we head out of here, this is going to be a super. I know I thought I gave you the hardest question before, but this one's a little just broad, I guess. What are you most proud of with this whole movement?
I'm most proud of like seeing the type of like innovation that people are coming up with like such little resources.
Yeah.
I think against all odds, like this stuff is hard and it can cost so much money and time and energy. And people are getting real creative on how to collaborate, how to be innovative with very little resources. And I think that's just really inspiring to me because I'm like, yeah, you don't have to do. Sometimes the best things don't have to cost a ton, and the things that do cost more require more innovation and thoughtfulness. And I think if we do live in a world that prioritizes innovation and thoughtfulness, then hopefully we have solutions that can be long lasting. Because I think the world we live in today is very focused on instant gratification. It's very focused on like the quickest thing, the quickest, cheapest thing. And it's so short sighted.
Hmm.
I feel like we live in a very short-sighted society, and I think for me, it's exciting to meet people that don't operate like that, that are thinking more long-term, multi-generational, thinking about the future of what's happening. And for me, like that's what really gets me excited.
I love that. That was super nice. And I completely agree with you, especially nowadays. Everyone's very instant gratification. Within a couple minutes, they want the reward. They don't even want the journey of actually getting there. And that's something, I think that's part of the issue with the world's where it's at right now, not only just society, but also environmentally. It makes complete sense. Before we head out of here, anything that you want to plug? Like, obviously, you have your socials, but any exciting projects? You mentioned them a little bit, but anything you want to like sort of shout out to people as far as things you're working on and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people can check out my work at browngirlgreen.com as well as Green Jobs Board, greenjobsboard.us, and follow us on Instagram at Green Jobs Board. I would definitely check that out. I'm going to be releasing more episodes of my podcast, the Brown Girl Green podcast, throughout the year. So definitely check that out. And yeah, if you live in either Los Angeles or the New York City area, I'm always hosting events in both areas bi-coastally. So if there's ever people that want to collaborate on events focused on climate and connection and community and education, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Kristy Drutman, or my email, which is browngirlgreenshow@gmail.com.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Kristy. It really means a lot. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kristy.